Words cannot even do it justice. I don't even know what to say about what just happened. It just beyond the realm of stupidity was that finish. One of the dumbest possible finishes they could have done in that main event match between Seth Rollins and The Fiend. They've been planning on Bray Wyatt challenging for the Universal Championship on this show for at least a month now. And that was the best finish they could come up with. That right there was the best finish they could decide on. No. I'm at a loss. And it's very easy to get hung up on how awful that finish was and ignore the fact that this pay-per-view sucked. I'm a minute 16 in. I might as well finally give my introduction. How's it going, y'all? This is Derek J407 here to give you my review of WWE Hell in a Cell live from the Golden One Center from Sacramento, California. The 2019 edition of this pay-per-view that should not exist, and tonight was just another example of why this pay-per-view should not exist. This was exactly the reason that this should not be a pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell. A show revolved all around having a Hell in a Cell match, not to blow off a big angle, not to blow off some long simmering rivalry, just because it's that time of the month. It's October, so that means it's time for Hell in a Cell. That's the only reason they do it. And tonight, with that finish in that main event, was exhibit 1017 billion, I don't know, of why exactly this pay-per-view should not exist. But like I said, this pay-per-view sucked. Considering the fact that up until just a few days ago, both Raw and SmackDown came on and went off air with there only being 3 matches announced for this entire show. 3. Both go-home shows ended with there only being 3 matches announced for this pay-per-view. 2 of those 3 matches were the first 2 matches on this show. And then, what was it, like a day or 2 ago, they announced Charlotte and Bayley, and then this afternoon, just a couple hours before showtime, that's when they gave us like 4 or 5 matches that they added at the last minute. Like, great. And it doesn't help that pretty much all of those matches were either just okay or were also pretty dull or uninspired or boring or had stupid finishes, depending on who you're asking as it pertains to one particular finish, which we'll get to. But let's just go ahead and get into this show. There is actual good that was on this show. It wasn't found on the pre-show because on the kickoff we had Natalya versus Lacey Evans in a never-ending feud that no one cares about between 2 people that hardly anyone cares about. The finish saw Lacey go for her moonsault. She missed. Natty locked her in. The sharpshooter got the win. After the match, while Natty was posing and celebrating, Lacey Evans got back up. She stood side by side with her, and in the same fashion that Lacey would do had she won, Natty went ahead and hauled off and decked Lacey right in the face, knocked her to the ground. And they announced later in the show that this feud will continue tomorrow night on Monday Night Raw in a last woman standing match between these 2. I don't care about that. I didn't care about this. Let's move on to the main show. First of all, the show started off with Pyro. Now, we saw the return of Pyro at the beginning of the shows. It happened on Raw, happened on SmackDown. It's good to have Pyro back. Now it's good to have it back on the pay-per-views too. It was sorely missed, so it's good to have it back. The show opened with the best match of the entire night, which I knew going in this was probably going to be the match of the night, but it definitely was, and that match was Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's Championship inside Hell in a Cell. A rare feud where Hell in a Cell actually could and was an advantage and was used properly to blow off this feud. I don't know what else to say. This match was great. Like, this was the best match of the entire night. These women killed themselves. They killed each other in this match. This match was brutal all throughout the entire thing. I was trying to keep up with, because I didn't want to, exclude a lot of stuff that happened in this match, but I'll try to go through as much as I was able to jot down to remember what happened. For starters, before the match even started, before the cell was even completely lowered, Sasha attacked Becky. She beat her down. By the time the cell was lowered, Sasha was still attacking Becky, but they were on the outside of the cell. So Becky was laid out on the outside of the cell. Sasha got back in. She was posing for the crowd, all that kind of stuff. And when she went back to get Becky on the outside, Becky kind of kicked the door right into Sasha's face. And then they started to fight, and then the bell rang. They went to close the door and lock it with the lock and chain, but before they could, Becky stole the chain, wrapped it around her fist, and hauled off right in the gut on Sasha and beat her down with the chain a little bit. And from there, chaos ensued. They were just beating the hell out of each other. Multiple weapons were brought in, steel chairs, kendo sticks, all that kind of stuff. One of the sickest bumps I've ever seen, not only in any Hell in a Cell match, but any women's match, any kind of match period. Sasha had Becky, Becky was standing on the outside. Right behind her was a ladder that was propped up in the corner of the cell. Sasha comes running off the apron, hits a Meteora on Becky, but in doing so, it knocked Becky backwards into that ladder. So the back of her head and neck collided right into that ladder. That looked like it sucked. That looked like it was not fun at all to go through that. But it was a really cool looking move to have happen in this match. Sasha had Becky's arm in between the entranceway of the cell and the door, and just kept smashing the door onto her arm to weaken her arm to prevent her from doing her finisher, the disarm her. So I thought that was pretty good. A little bit later on, Becky came back. She hit a missile drop kick on Sasha, while Sasha had a chair right in her face, so kind of drop kicked the chair right into her face. Sasha got some kendo sticks, lodged them in the corner of the cell, that same corner where that ladder was with that Meteora spot. She lodged like 2 or 3 of them into the cell. She was trying to ram Becky face first into it, but Becky reversed it, and she, that being Sasha, ended up running face first into it. Becky put some more kendo sticks over there, got a steel chair in a seated form, placed it on top of the kendo sticks, up in the air, still propped up, wedged into the cell, so the chair was upright in the air. She places Sasha on the chair. She gets back in the ring, goes up top, she doesn't go up top. She is on the apron and hits a running drop kick and drop kicks her right there on that spot, and she came crashing down, did Sasha. So again, really cool looking spot. There was a table set up in the middle of the ring, and Sasha, that is, she tried to attempt a suplex on Becky through the table, but Becky slipped out of it. She attempted a power bomb, but then Sasha slipped out of that, and she ended up hitting a Meteora on Becky and went crashing through the table. Pretty tame compared to the other stuff that we saw before that, but still really good. Becky ended up getting locked in a bank statement with Sasha using a kendo stick that was grinding at her face at first, but then it looked like she was choking her with it, so that made it look even more brutal, which I thought was a really cool visual when they held on it a little bit with Sasha wrenching back with the kendo stick on Becky's throat. I thought that was a really cool looking spot there. There was a chair, again in a seated position, but it was kind of wedged sideways into the cell on the outside, and Sasha ended up shoving Becky face first into that chair, So that looked pretty brutal. And then Sasha started to collect a whole bunch of chairs from under the ring, was throwing them all inside the ring onto Becky. Sasha gets back in. She's gloating. She's, just shining bright for the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And then Becky gets her, and she ends up hitting a Bexploder from the top rope, crashing all the way down onto all of those chairs that were laid out in the ring by Sasha. Becky locks her in to disarm her, and Sasha taps out. She taps out onto one of the chairs, but she taps out, and Becky gets the win. So Becky is still the Raw Women's Champion. The finish shocked me. I figured that Sasha might get the win, and that might transition Becky over to maybe SmackDown. She's been a heavily promoted superstar for Fox recently, so I figured that was probably the direction they were going in, but clearly not. I mean, there's still time. We can see what happens. But, yeah, so Sasha didn't get the win here, which I know upset a lot of the big Sasha Banks fans out there. This is just another big time match for her to be in that she failed in and all that kind of stuff. But aside from that, I felt that Sasha probably could have won, but I can't lie and say that this was not a really good match, because it was. This was a really great match. And judging by the rest of this show, this was the best thing on the entire show. So unfortunately, it was pretty much downhill from there. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Not quite, because the next match was really good too. And it was a tornado tag team match with a team of Erick Rowan and Luke Harper taking on Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan, the unlikely tag team partners that joined together to take on a common enemy in Rowan and Harper. They added the tornado rules stipulation to this match, I think on the pre-show or before they went on air. So it was a late edition, but it was a good edition because it made this match infinitely more fun and chaotic than it would have been without it. The entire match, I mean, there were some dull moments, especially when Rowan and Harper were kind of taking control and they were kind of slow and plotting and dominating over Daniel Bryan and all that kind of stuff. But like the last couple of minutes of this match really kicked it into high gear. Like it went balls to the wall. There was a spot early on where Harper did a big dive through the ropes onto Roman, and his head kind of crashed into the table, and he looked like that it sucked for him. Like he looked like he was legit hurt. Either that or it was good selling. That's something that I will say again as it pertains to this match, so pay attention to that. Looked good, like good selling, but could have been real. So keep that in the back of your mind as I go through the rest of this match. There was an attempt for a double or a combined power bomb on Daniel Bryan by Rowan and Harper. They were on the American announce table. They were trying to set up Bryan for a power bomb. Rowan sets up Bryan, puts him on Harper's shoulders, but in doing so, Bryan reversed it, hit a Hurricane Rana on Harper off of the announce table, and Roman, who was kind of knocked out into the crowd a little bit earlier, he gets back up, springs back up, runs across the tables and spears Rowan off the American announce table, and they crash land through, I believe, was the German announce table. And in doing so, Roman quickly was grasping at his knee, looking like he was in agonizing pain. Again, looked real, but it could have just been really good selling on his part, because he even sold it after the match when he was limping to the back. So I don't know. So we get back in the ring. It comes down to Harper and Bryan. Harper ends up hitting a bunch of exploder suplexes on Daniel Bryan. He goes for another one, but Daniel Bryan manages to land on his feet that time. Harper turns around, sees this, goes for a clothesline. Bryan ducks. Roman Reigns comes out of nowhere, hits him with a Superman punch. Bryan comes back around, hits him with the running knee. Harper kind of collides into the ropes to bounce himself back up so he can get in position to get hit with a spear from Roman Reigns, and that was the 1, 2, 3. So the unlikely partners get the win. They get their revenge over Harper and Rowan, and after the match, they stared each other down. Bryan extended his hand for the handshake like they did on SmackDown the previous week. Roman, he was a little hesitant again, but he went in for the handshake, but then Bryan pulled away, and instead he came back with an offer for a hug, for he and Roman to hug it out. And the crowd, who were really into Daniel Bryan here, they were egging it on like, yes, hug it out. And Roman, again reluctant, but he still went in for the hug. The two hugged it out. Bryan left the ring. Now here's where things get a little fuzzy here, because apparently Bryan, we saw him briefly on camera. He was on stage and it looked like he kind of crouched down and collapsed. There's rumors that that might have been real, although this is what I was talking about earlier. People were saying that that was actually a real thing and Bryan really did collapse. Others are saying it was just really good selling. It's really up in the air right now. I didn't look that much more into it before I started recording here, so I don't really know. So if you know, and before whether I see it after I upload this video or not, leave it down in the comments below what you thought, or if you do know what happened, if that was real or if that was just, Bryan selling really well, but we know his concussion history and all that kind of stuff in his neck. So if it was real, that sucks. If it was just really good selling, then he's really good. But yeah, the first and second best match of this entire show was the first and second match of the main card. From here, we got the leftovers and the late additions. We had Randy Orton versus Ali, which, while randomly set up and added to the show at the last minute, it does have a backstory to it, seeing as how it was Randy Orton who cost Ali a spot in the Elimination Chamber match earlier this year when he stomped on his face and gave him that huge welt on over his eye. So there's a backstory to this match. And they made it seem like here, Ali, he's an up-and-comer. He's trying to prove himself against an established guy like Randy Orton. And Randy Orton's trying to tell him, like, stay in your lane. You're not at my level and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of the story behind the match and a lot of the stuff that happened in this match. Ali, of course, was impressive. The fans really didn't care much for it, but as it was going on, they started to care a little bit more. We had a really cool counter of the RKO. Randy Orton went for the RKO, and he went down, and Ali went down with him, but he caught himself and landed on his hands and did like a quick handstand. So I thought that was really cool, and he paused for a second. Randy Orton looked confused, and then Ali went for a roll-up, but it was only good for a 2 count. So he was going for his move where he does the somersault through the ropes and hits a face buster. He did it earlier in the match, only good for a 2 count. So he went for it again here, but this time when he came out from the somersault, he got laid out with an RKO. Randy won, and even after the match, he was kind of nodding his head to Ali, showing him a little bit of a sign of respect. So it turned into a good match down the stretch, but again, it was just something added at the last minute. Speaking of which, that also can be said about this next match. The Women's Tag Team Championship match, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross defending their titles against Asuka and Kairi Sane, the Kabuki Warriors. The match was nothing special, but what it was notable and important about it was how heelish Asuka and Kairi Sane were acting. Now, Asuka, we've seen signs of heelish tendencies from her character going back to NXT. There was that period of time after she had initially won the championship, and I think after she had pretty much gotten through with Bayley, there, like the Ember Moon feud and all that kind of stuff, she was acting kind of heelish during that period of time. So we've been exposed to a more heelish, evil side of Asuka before. Of course, nothing compared to, the stuff that she did in Japan, but we saw a cockier side of Asuka there, and we kind of saw that here. We have not seen that kind of side from Kairi Sane before, so that was very interesting. Not full-on heel, they weren't doing too many heelish things, although one time when Kairi Sane was in the ring, Nikki Cross was on the apron, and Kairi kind of knocked her off the apron, so that was probably the most heelish thing she did in the match, but otherwise she was pretty much the same Kairi Sane. She hit the insane elbow on Nikki Cross, but Nikki got not her knees up, but her legs up and kind of kicked Kairi up. So I thought that was really interesting. But the finish came where Alexa was on the apron. She did like a rolling dive onto Kairi Sane, so they're both out. The referee's distracted by this. He sees this, Meanwhile, Nikki Cross is back in the ring. She turns around to Asuka, and Asuka sprays green mist right into the face and the eyes of Nikki Cross, gives her a swift kick to the side of the head, pins her 1, 2, 3, and the Kabuki Warriors are the new women's tag team champions, the 4th ever women's tag team champions. So, a nice little change. I didn't expect it. Then again, I didn't expect this match at all. But hey, it was at the last minute, and like I said, the match itself wasn't all that special, but seeing a more heelish side of Asuka and Kairi Sane was interesting, and having Asuka win with the green mist, a la Great Muta, Tajiri, many other people. And of course, there's the different levels of mist. You know, you got the green mist, which we've seen in WWE multiple times. There's black mist. I think there's yellow and red. They're all varying levels of danger and how much harm they cause. Some of them sting, some of them blind you, some of them paralyze you. I don't know. They all differ. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Up next was a 6-man tag team match. The OC, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and the United States Champion AJ Styles taking on the Viking Raiders. I was going to say Hanson and Rowe. Of course, it's Erick and Ivar. And a surprise partner who turned out to be Braun Strowman. Why they didn't just announce it as the OC versus the Viking Raiders and Braun Strowman, I don't know. Why they even bothered hyping it up as a surprise, only for the surprise to be underwhelming, I have no idea. But that's how they roll. WWE got a WWE, yo. So that's how it goes sometimes. The match itself was nothing. It ended in a DQ where all 3 members of the OC were kicking and beating down Braun Strowman. So the referee just rang the bell because he lost control. Bullshit finish. But to a match that just had no business being on this show. So after the match, the Viking Raiders, they come in, they help Braun, they help save him, and then it comes down to AJ and Braun. AJ went for the phenomenal forearm, but when he bounced off the ropes, Braun caught him in midair with a KO punch. Obviously a warning or a kind of jab at Tyson Fury after their little incident that happened on SmackDown a couple days earlier on the Fox premiere. And they announced that Tyson Fury will be appearing on Raw tomorrow night with a live microphone. So we'll see if they set something up. Maybe Braun Strowman versus Tyson Fury at that Saudi Arabia show on Halloween. So Saudi Blood Money Show 4. They had the Street Profits backstage. Who cares? During their promo, Tamina won the 24/7 championship from Carmella and ran away. She ran into Tyler Breeze, who was just backstage doing nothing and was back there for no reason other than to just get punched in the face by Tamina, who ran away. And then R-Truth and Carmella ran separate ways to find her, and that was that. So Tamina is the 24/7 champion. Last time I checked, I don't know. I don't care. Up next, Chad Gable versus King Corbin. Of course, coming after that segment with The Rock and Becky Lynch, Baron Corbin was subjected to STD chants. I said they were not going to stick, but apparently they are. But Corbin got on the microphone. He, basically, shunned all that and, mocked Gable for being short again, and even went as far as to rechristen him as Shorty Gable, which will come into play a little bit later. So they go on to have a match. We've seen them have a match. They had that King of the Ring finals. They had another match on Raw the week after. They have really good chemistry together. And Chad Gable has this ability to have the crowd, when he comes out and makes his entrance, and at the start of the match, they're not really reacting to him all that much. Although here they did because, after Corbin cut that promo, Gable immediately went after Corbin. But usually, especially during his entrance, they don't really react much to him. But once the match goes on and we get the near falls and all that kind of stuff, and he's in there with a heel that people hate, which is Baron Corbin, the fans really get behind Gable and they really want to see the guy win. And fortunately for him, that actually happened here. Corbin went to the outside, got his royal scepter, was about to use it, but the referee took it away from him before he could get the chance to. And in doing so, Corbin had his back turned to Gable, and Gable rolled him up and got the win. And we heard Greg Hamilton, the ring announcer, announce the winner of this match is Shorty Gable. So apparently King Corbin does have some actual power, because when he renamed him Shorty Gable, apparently that was word for the announcer to also announce him as that. And then we saw a segment later on where he was getting interviewed backstage and Kayla Braxton called him Shorty. Then she, corrected herself and said, Gable. But no. And then Gable even said in the promo, I don't care what you call me. So this might be a thing. There was rumors that they trademarked Shorty G and that would become the new name for Chad Gable. They just started doing the short jokes for him, but now they're calling him Shorty Gable, so there might be some credence to that rumor. So please don't do that. For the love of God, do not change this man's name to Shorty goddamn Gable. And in that segment, by the way, Chad Gable got beat down by Baron Corbin, so the feud is obviously not over. Then we had Bayley versus Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I'm going to be real with y'all, I didn't really pay that much attention to this match. I didn't really care that much about it, especially considering the fact that I kind of had a feeling of what the finish was going to be, and I was right. I judged that based on the fact that Bayley won at the previous pay-per-view, and earlier on this night, Sasha Banks did not win the Raw Women's Championship. So I felt, well, okay, we got the women's tag team titles changing hands, but I didn't account for those being defended on the show at all, so I didn't really count them. But I looked at how the Raw Women's title was retained and Sasha failed to win, so I figured, okay, well, maybe someone else is gonna lose their championship on this show as far as the women are concerned, and that would be Bayley, and that's what happened. I'm not even gonna do a recap of the match. It was a Bayley Charlotte Flair match, so if you've seen one, you've probably seen them all. Just the roles were reversed this time. But Charlotte got the win with the figure 8, and they had different shots of the crowd who were not overly thrilled that Charlotte won her 10th women's championship. I don't know. I don't think that's counting the Divas title or NXT and all that kind of stuff, but whatever it's counting, she's won enough to rack up 10 championships. This woman has been, ever since she first appeared on NXT television, she's been around since what? 2014? It's now 2019, and she's a 10-time champion. Yeah. 16's coming soon, and then she'll break that record too. Now the main event. Seth Rollins defending the Universal Championship against Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, inside Hell in a Cell. I can shit on this right now and not even do a review of the match, but let's, for the sake of being fair, talk about the match itself. So, for Bray's entrance, of course, still cool. This is only the second time we've ever seen it. We've seen the Fiend a bunch of times, but we haven't seen the full entrance since SummerSlam. And this time, since the Hell in a Cell is red now, we had red lights to match it. So I thought that was cool. And they got in the ring, both of them. The lights are still red, so it's still going along with Wyatt's entrance. Then the bell rang, the match started, and the lights were still red. And they were pretty much red for the remainder of the match, and even all the post-match stuff. So, wasn't too big of a fan of that, but I guess, it adds to the creepiness factor of Bray Wyatt. Let this not be a regular thing. Please don't make this a regular thing. So the match itself. Rollins got some kendo sticks, or at least one, and was hitting it on Bray, and he no-sold. And that was pretty much, a common occurrence throughout the rest of this match. Wyatt no-sold a lot of the shit that Rollins did to him. Not all of it. At one point, Rollins got some steel steps and rammed him into Bray's face. He hit 3 dives on him, but on the 3rd dive, Bray caught him and hit him with the Sister Abigail. I believe it was outside onto the cage. Rollins eventually got back up. He hit a bunch of super kicks on Bray Wyatt and hit him with a frog splash off the top rope and through a table. So Wyatt was laid out on a table. He hit the frog splash, goes crashing through the table. After which, Wyatt, the Fiend, got right back up immediately, instantly got back up onto his feet. Again, no selling it. Rollins hits a curb stomp, and once again, Wyatt gets right back up, hits him with Sister Abigail, but it was only good for a 2 count. Wyatt did the neck snap thing that he did to Finn Balor at SummerSlam. Then he went outside under the ring and pulled out a large mallet. A mallet that he used, at least regular, normal, Mr. Rogers Bray Wyatt, used once to kill Ramblin' Rabbit in one of the 50 times we've seen Ramblin' Rabbit get killed on the Firefly Funhouse. So he used the mallet and he kind of drove it into Seth's gut and drove him into the steel wall, but Seth, got out of it. He hit him with a bunch of super kicks, and he even gave Wyatt a stomp onto the mallet. Hit him with the jumping knees, bouncing off the ropes and the jumping knees, and he hit him with more curb stomps. And at this point, the crowd was booing the hell out of Seth Rollins. This was a pro-Fiend crowd, and they had no interest in seeing this man, this beast, get beat by Seth Rollins on this show. They had no desire whatsoever to see that happen. So they were booing every single stomp that Seth would hit. And with every single stomp, the Fiend kept getting back up. He kept, recuperating, and Rollins got more and more desperate, more and more crazed, more and more angry. He hit him with a pedigree, and then another stomp, which we saw at Clash of Champions on Braun Strowman, that finished off Strowman. He did it here to Bray, and Bray kicked out at 1. So completely burying all of Seth's moves, including the pedigree, which I bet Triple H is thrilled about. So Rollins gets a chair. He gets in the ring, and he smashes the chair right onto Bray's face. He's standing over Bray, and Bray has his head out, and he smashes the chair right onto Bray's face. Then he goes for the cover. Wyatt's out again at 1. He keeps the chair on his face, gets a ladder, and rams the ladder onto the chair, onto his face. This time, Wyatt's out at a 2 count. So now, Rollins puts the chair and the ladder all on Bray's face. He goes out to the outside, gets a toolbox, and smashes the toolbox onto all this shit that's on Bray's face. Just keeps smashing it over and over again. Wyatt's still not done. He's laid out, but he's not done. So Rollins goes back to the outside, and he finds a sledgehammer. He attempts to use the sledgehammer, but the referee is pleading with him, don't use it, don't be like that, don't do this, think about what it would do to you and all that kind of stuff. Rollins looks like, he's thinking, you're right, I'm not going to use it. And then he hauls off, and he unloads and uses that sledgehammer and just smashes it right onto Bray's face. At which point the referee decided to ring the bell, and the match was over, and the bullshit parade began. The fans shat all over this, loud, thunderous boos from the crowd. They hated this finish, as did I. As stupid as that was, it gets dumber. So, officials, referees, and all that kind of stuff, they all run out. They're all checking on Bray, making sure he's still conscious. They bring a stretcher in. They're about to stretcher him out. Rollins is still out there. And then he goes over to Bray, taunts him some more, is standing over him. And as he's doing it, Bray gets right up, gets his hand right into Seth's mouth, and locks him in the mandible claw. Perfectly fine. He's yelling, he's screaming, he's coherent. At which point the fans, after already chanting bullshit, they start chanting, restart the match. And you know what? You should have restarted the fucking match. If the whole point of stopping the match was that this man is now basically dead, and he's right back up with barely a scratch on him, restart the fucking match. But no, they didn't do that. Bray got him on the outside, hit him with the Sister Abigail. Then he locked him in the mandible claw, and we saw the lights flickering so we could see images of Seth, and there was a bunch of blood gushing out of his mouth. Fake blood, I'm sure. I'm positive, but it was a bunch of blood gushing out of his mouth. It was a cool visual. Unfortunately, in the background, all you hear is bullshit chants and AEW chants for AEW. And then the lights go out. Fans are still booing. They cut back on. We see that image of Bray on the entrance way, looking back at Seth's dead body. Lights go back off, and we hear that cackle from Bray Wyatt, which is usually met with either silence, cheers, or just fear from the crowd. Here, they were booing. And they went off the air with the sound of Bray laughing and the crowd booing. You might as well have Vince McMahon's laughter right in that exact spot. I couldn't think of a better way to go off the air than that. The fans shitting all over that entire finish, and all you hear in the background as a representative of WWE is laughter. Laughing at them, the fans, at us, for wasting our time watching this show, which up to this point, after the first two matches, was a complete waste of time. Okay, yeah, it was cool seeing, Asuka use the mist and maybe turn heel alongside Kairi Sane. The Chad Gable match with Baron Corbin wasn't too bad, even though it belonged on Raw or something, just like Randy Orton and Ali. Again, it became good in the last 3 minutes, but that's a TV match. Nothing for pay-per-view. That 6-man tag, woof. Pure TV match. All that stuff that happened, even if some of it was good, it was all not worthy of being on this pay-per-view. And it clearly wasn't, since they announced it for the pay-per-view like 2 hours before the pay-per-view even started. When they announced those matches, I'm sure that's when all those talent realized they even had a match on the show tonight. But you have all of that, this shit that belongs on TV, and then you end it with that match. The match itself was fine. Telling the story of Seth doing everything in his power to put Wyatt away. But why couldn't you have done that? Whereas Seth unloads to use that sledgehammer one more time, the Fiend gets up and locks him in the mandible claw. Then you do the spot where his mouth is full of blood, spitting out and all that kind of stuff. And then he puts him down. And then the referee stops the match by doing so, rewarding the championship to Bray Wyatt. That's because they had no plans of putting the championship on Bray Wyatt, which begs the question: if you had no thoughts or you had no intentions of putting the championship on Bray Wyatt, then why did you put Bray Wyatt in this championship match? Why did you do that? You could have put him in a feud with almost anyone else that he could have just beat easily, but you decided to put him in this championship match. Then why didn't you have him beat him? Instead, you do a bullshit finish where the referee calls for a DQ and a Hell in a Cell match, or deems this too violent to continue. Despite the fact that barely even a minute or two later, Wyatt is right back up on his feet with no signs of injury. It's Seth Rollins who's now injured, who has to get helped out by officials and shit, and Bray Wyatt is gone. Stupid. In the words of Randy Orton to Kofi Kingston in 2010, stupid. This was a dumb finish. AEW chants. Couldn't be more deserving of a shitty finish like this. This was awful. And like I said, unfortunately, this awful finish overshadows the fact that this entire show was bad. The Hell in a Cell match between Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks was excellent. Those women deserve a round of applause, a standing ovation for that match. That was great. It was even better than the first Hell in a Cell match between Sasha and Charlotte. That match had nothing on the match that Sasha and Becky had on the show. That tornado tag team match, while not the greatest thing in the world, and probably even could belong on a regular episode of Raw or SmackDown, was good in its own right. And again, I'm praying that Daniel Bryan is okay and he didn't actually collapse at the end. But gosh damn, that was a brutal match, and it was a lot of fun to watch. The rest of the show was not, and this finish was insulting. It was infuriating. So I don't even know where the hell they go from here. Where do they even go from here? I don't even know. What I do know is that was a terrible finish. It was insulting, it was embarrassing, and like I said, going off the air with the crowd shitting all over it and just viciously booing it while there's laughter in the background is a perfect metaphor for how the WWE feels about us. So, that's it for me. I have nothing left to give you, so bye.